Hey, good morning, guys. Good to be with you. I'm in Louisfontaine today, freezing cold, but it's a beautiful place early morning. Just want to remind you of what we've been talking about in the book of 1 in James, chapter 1. We have reference to the deceiver. We know that Satan's greatest weapon is deception. He makes things look like they're not, and he makes things not like they look. And we're talking about his tactics. We've spoken about the snake, how he comes as a little sniveler and he questions things. He just sows seeds of doubt. We've spoken about the wolf in sheep's clothing. But today I want to talk to you about probably the most obvious one, and that is the roaring lion. The Bible talks about him coming at us, look, as a roaring lion, seeking whom he may devour. That's what lions do. They devour stuff. But he's a roaring lion, which makes him pretty harmless. A lion can't do much while he's roaring, but we're going to talk about him anyway. My mind straight away goes to the story of David and Goliath. Goliath was a roaring lion, and David knew how to deal with him. You see, the roaring lion's greatest attribute or his greatest ability is just to intimidate you, just to make you fearful. Isn't that exactly what Goliath did? He came to make the children of Israel fearful, and it worked. The children of Israel lived in roaring across the valley, saying, I'm going to do you in, for 40 days, and they trembled in their shoes. They hid behind the rocks. They lived in perpetual fear until this fearless young man came out of the ranks, and he did what we all know the story says he did. But it's interesting that David was fearless. And the interesting thing was, even more so, is why he was fearless. When he looked at that giant 9 feet tall with his big armor and swords and an intimidating voice and a great track record as a hardened soldier, we see David not being intimidated at all. You see, the devil knows that if he can make you fearful, he can control you. David wasn't going to be controlled by fear. He looked this giant square in the face and he told him his fortune. The lion that was roaring and the Goliath that was ranting and raving was angry, and David made him even angrier. And we get this beautiful picture of David's great tactics. You see, he didn't fight the giant on the giant's terms. He said, if you want to fight me, giant, I'm going to make it that you fight me on my terms. So here we have this nimble, young, fit young man with a slingshot and a couple of stones running through the rocks, intimidating the giant, shouting back at the giant. Giant was angry. Giant took off after him in the midday heat, roaring 45 degrees centigrade heat in the middle of the desert. And when he was exhausted, David stood out from behind the rock and did him in. Now, that's a great tactic on how to deal with the roaring lion. First of all, people, we do not walk in fear. If Satan knows he can make you fearful, and he knows that he can, he knows that he too can control you. So how do we control this fear? You see, everybody says you've got to know who you are. Well, Satan said he knows who he is. Goliath knew who he was. He knew his track record. He was high up on his ability to tell his credentials to the people. But David knew whose he was. Now, people, this is so important. Please get this, that in a world that is acting and making us feel fearful, and we are fearful people. We fear so many things. We fear the future. We fear the past. We fear our own shadows sometimes. And we've been raised with a sense of fear. And when we walk in fear, Satan smiles and says, I know I can control you. So fear is not knowing who you are. It's knowing whose you are. You see, when David stood in front of Goliath and he shouted back at him, he says, you come to me with swords and spears, but I come to you with a name. Oh man, what a name. The name Jehovah Sabaoth, which is God's warrior name. God's fighting name is Jehovah Sabaoth. He says, I stand before you in the name of Jehovah Sabaoth, and I know whose I am. I know who he is. That's more important than knowing who I am. I know whose I am. Now, I don't know who I'm talking to today, but I do know this, that there's probably a number of you who are living in fearful times. Maybe bad health. You got the phone call, that told you that things were not looking good. Maybe bankruptcy is around the corner. Maybe the business hasn't gone so well. Maybe a whole bunch of things has happened there. Maybe relationally, you're being eased out of the situation. Maybe there's a lot of fear going on of circumstances and future for children and future for yourself. And what are we going to do? What are we going to do? People, don't be intimidated by the giant of fear. He's a roaring lion. And you stand boldly in the face of a roaring lion. You don't run from this one. You face him square on. You tell him whose you are. You're a child of God, for goodness sake. I don't see children of God wimping around the place. You're a child of God, that you can stand against Satan. You can stand against him and give him a taste of his own medicine. When I love that saying, I forget who made it up, saying when the devil tells you what he's going to do, you just tell him his future. When he reminds you of your past, that's what it says. You remind him of his future, and he will leave you alone. Stand strong. Stand on a strong foundation of who God is. Stand in the power of the sword of the Spirit, which is the word of God, and you tell Satan, you tell that roaring lion where to go. I hope that this makes some kind of sense to you today, and if that's your situation, do the best you can, and we're praying for you. Have a great day, people. See you soon. Bye-bye.